Are we ready to start? Last stragglers coming in? Yeah, excellent, lovely. I've got the go-ahead. A very warm welcome to this fringe event, Supercharging Physics R&D for UK prosperity. My name is Anjana Ahuja. I'm a freelance science writer and the science columnist for the Financial Times. I'm also a lapsed physicist, so I think that's why I've been invited to come and chair this wonderful event here today. And this is being hosted by the Institute of Physics, which is the learned society for physics for England and Ireland. And let's get into how this is going to run. So first of all, just want to give you some really amazing stats, which I'm sure you know about, for physics. So why physics specifically? Why is physics R&D important? Physics accounts for, or physics-based businesses account for 11% of GDP, or at least they did in 2019. And we know that the way the world is going, increasingly tech, if we think about green technologies, materials, energy, climate, all those tech need physics-based innovations and need the physics-based businesses to produce them. So how do we do what Rachel Reeves says, which is, if growth is the challenge, investment is the solution, how do we target that investment appropriately? So we've got a fantastic panel. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, just say who they are, where they're from, and then we're going to get into a panel discussion. I'm going to ask each of them a question. After that, we're going to open it up to the floor for Q&A. And so let's go. So I'm going to go from the end over there. If you could just say who you are, please, where you're from, and why you're on this panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So my name's Matt Brookes. I'm a professor of physics at the University of Nottingham. And I guess the reason I'm here, we work on different types of human brain imaging, and we're trying to commercialise some of those products of that research. And so we've recently spun out a company, and I guess that's what I'll be talking about.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Robert Lamb. I'm the elected to be Vice President for Business at the Institute of Physics. I am also the Chief Research and Technology Officer at Leonardo UK, and my role in that is academic engagement to look at emerging technology for the UK supply chain. And what I hope to get out of this meeting is an improved understanding of the importance of physics to underpin UK manufacturing. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jo Slaughter-Newson, another physicist by background. I'm now a venture capital investor at Almanac Ventures. So we support innovative businesses based on scientific innovation. And I'm here because the foundation and everything that drives these businesses is basically R&D in physics and interdisciplinary science. And the impact that these businesses have based on that R&D is not only prosperity, growth, jobs, etc., but it's also solving really important issues that we have as a planet, including climate change, which is where we focus as a firm on industrial decarbonisation.
Hello, my name is Peter Stevens, and I'm from ARM. So ARM is a computer architecture and IP company based in Cambridge, which has over the last 30 years built the most ubiquitous computing platform on the planet. Thank you. So I'm sort of here because I think a lot of sort of ARM's success is driven by its capacity to sort of have access to world-class talent. Some of the most sort of impressive computer engineers in the world who have clustered around Cambridge. So thinking how we can kind of continue to grow as we enter a more exciting world.
Excellent. So hopefully there are policy people here. We'll get some ideas on where we should go with growing these physics-based businesses, unlocking that innovation dividend, if I can use that jargon, I guess. But basically everything sort of starts with physics. But I would say that, wouldn't I, being a physicist? So I'm going to start by, I'll start with you, Peter. ARM, as many people know, is a business with global reach and impact. So why do you invest in R&D in the UK?
So I think a lot of that is, Cambridge is fundamentally ARM's home. It's our largest office by a significant margin. I think we have about just under 3,000 engineers in Cambridge. And so we also have offices in Sheffield, Bristol, it's a small new one, and Manchester as well. So in terms of why the UK, I think there is still that cluster of incredible talent, of particularly electrical engineers, computer engineers, which are sort of have found themselves in the area. I think something that's we're having to see a lot more of, and actually an interesting point is sort of we're starting to see our second biggest office outside Cambridge is in Bangalore. So that's where we're seeing a lot more talent, a lot more skills coming through that. And I think something that we've started to see as a challenge in that point is one of it feels like there is a great deal more investment in computer architecture engineering in India and actually in the UK, of course, like very, very talented, very smart physicists, people with an interest in computer science are more inclined to go and study things that have a more sort of natural propensity to be sort of at the top end. So whether it's AI, machine learning, these are the very sexy topics to go. And so the question is, how can we make sure that we kind of promote the importance of some of the sort of more foundational computer architecture, sort of very, very high up the supply chain, and that's something that we continue to support. So in ARM we have something called the Semiconductor Education Alliance, which is trying to kind of articulate more sort of clearly what are the attributes that we're looking for from young people and from people who want to enter the workforce in that space. So yeah, those are the kind of things that we do, and I think we continue to invest for a number of reasons. I think it's the inertia, the clustering effect around Cambridge is really important. And
so you're not worried about the kind of the concentration.
Yeah, I think the concentration becomes self-fulfilling. I think what you see so often in so many of these tech clusters you see globally is there is often kind of one foundational organisation. So so much of Silicon Valley can trace itself back to Hewlett-Packard. And I think so many of these different kind of companies who start off there and then it clusters itself. And I think Cambridge has established a cluster which is incredibly effective. But I think the question is how can we maintain that sort of continue to oxygenate that cluster around Cambridge to do that.
Okay, Joe, I want to ask you. The UK is doing pretty well in terms compared to Europe in terms of investment, capital VC investment, but is behind places like California, New York, Massachusetts. What makes the UK attractive for investment, and what would it take for us to become more attractive? How could we up that?
Yeah, so it's a very multifaceted question, because in order for venture capitalists like me to make those investments, there have to be the ventures, they have to be supported by the right talent, by the right ecosystems, mentors, etc. And to be honest, more recently, the question has been a little bit more like how do we make sure that we keep our edge and stay above the competition in Europe, because some of that ecosystem has been or has not been supported in the way that we would have hoped that it was. But
such as what? Can you give us a concrete example of that?
Yeah, so it's fundamentally underpinned by the education system to start with. We need to have the right technical education, but also it needs to instill sort of creativity in our engineers and scientists as well. To give them the right skills, not just to sort of do science experiments in the lab as an undergrad, but then to go off and PhDs and beyond that to really create new technologies and new science. So it needs that breadth of education. It then needs we need talent from all around the world to be incentivized to come here, to stay here. That's been difficult, especially in the European context. But to stick to the positive, there's so much more opportunity to be had, because we do, as we were saying, that there are really excellent academic institutions, and there are world-class clusters that are built. We've got critical mass. We just need to make sure that we don't go backwards. Do you want to?
No, I just want to build on Joe's point. I think that kind of I think there's always been a challenge in terms of skills and education about kind of delineation between sort of curriculum, DFE, extracurricular, DCIT. And I think there's been a real tension point about how can we promote the sense of inherent curiosity, so that science isn't just seen as something that you find your way just getting through if you get to university, but actually how can we make sure that it's accessible to more people, particularly more women? How can we get that there? Sorry.
I think we see a theme emerging there, but I want to keep going down the panel so that they each get a chance to speak. So Robert, I want a very brief answer to the first bit, which is how does Leonardo contribute to the UK economy and the job market through its R&D? But perhaps the second bit of that is more important, which is what are the barriers that stop you contributing more
Okay, well, in answer to the first part of the question, we engage in R&D with academia.
Can you speak into your,
Oh, sure.
And do shout if you can't hear.
Okay, so we collaborate with UK academia on a number of fronts, sponsoring PhD studentships, assisting in collaborative grant applications into the research councils, for example. We also have graduate placement schemes. So there's quite a strong and broad interaction across UK academia on a number of technologies relevant to our future strategy. Now, with the second part of the question on barriers, I think the key issue for us as a manufacturing organisation is a supply or a constant supply of graduates in the sciences and engineering and mathematical disciplines to support the next generation of engineering development. That is a crucial issue for any manufacturing organisation. It's particularly relevant, I think, for Leonardo and the defence industry.
Okay, Matt. Your question, that's what you're looking at me blankly for, aren't you? So your question is, I mean, you've spun out a business at Nottingham. What was that like to go from discovery to innovation to company? And what did it teach you about the way we do innovation in this country, the ecosystem?
What's it like? It's a bumpy road. I think there are a lot of things we do quite well. So our technology was developed through the UK Quantum Technologies Programme, which for those of you who don't know, it's about 10 years old. It started in 2014. It's about to go into another 5 years of funding. And it's been a very different way of funding research, and that's been really fantastic. We couldn't have spun out a company without that. So
what's different about it?
I think it's very industry-led or led by industry questions. So rather than sort of let's give some money to academics to build something and be innovative, it's really about saying what are the problems that are out there. So in our case, medical problems, it's about mental health, neurological conditions. And you say, right, what can we do to solve those? I think Innovate UK has been brilliant. Again, we couldn't have done what we do without Innovate UK. I could sort of moan and say, well, Innovate UK, there's a lot of admin that's required with these grants, and they don't always join up with UKRI. I think, though, to echo what everybody else has said, the real difficulty has been not only finding talent but also retaining it. So, particularly in universities, the lifeblood of innovation is postdocs, so people who have just got their PhDs. And we pay these guys £35,000 a year and give them a 3-year contract, and they're very difficult to hold on to when they're being offered $100,000 to go and work in America.
Okay, so we've heard some of the sort of your spectrum of experiences. I want to dig down a bit. I mean, one of the key themes I think that's coming out is talent. So I'm going to go again. Actually, I want to open this up a bit, and perhaps you could discuss this amongst yourselves. Is talent the key problem, or is it lack of investment, given that the amount of or the proportion of GDP that's going into R&D is a bit lower than here, lower in the UK than it is for, say, Germany or South Korea, and those numbers are, we're at in 2022. UK R&D spending was at 2.8% of GDP, compared with over 3% in Germany, 3.6% in the USA, and 5.2% in Korea. Is it money?
I think it depends entirely on where in the supply chain, what is it that your organisation is doing. I think I can speak for Arm in that it's fundamentally it is about people. It's access to talent. It's having talented people and the skilled people in the UK and having access to them. Which is fundamentally what makes the difference, I think. I can understand, of course, particularly at the smaller scale and for the more kind of heavy industry manufacturing side of things, of course, there's going to be more of a sense of more need for capital investment. But of course, it depends on where you are in the organisation. But I'm sure.
I would agree. I think it is about people, but obviously more money drives more people if you can get it into the right area. So I was having a conversation earlier today. I think I'm going to look over there. The UK recruited 17% of all the physics teachers it needed last year. Is that right? So if we're not getting the teachers into these roles, how can we expect to not only teach but also inspire a next generation of physicists who are then going to go on to do degrees, who are going to go on to do PhDs, and who are going to go on to to fill those positions that we need? So unfortunately, I think it's not something that can be solved necessarily by throwing more money at R&D, although that would be part of it. I think it goes all the way back to the education system.
So,
I think it's probably all wrapped up together, and we need sort of more support through the whole ecosystem, because if we'll lose those people if there isn't the support behind the innovative projects that are getting funded, and that's sort of within academia, then that sort of transition phase where Innovate UK and others sort of support, and then into the private capital. But
sorry, yes, I just want to add to those points. More money is always attractive. Nobody ever turns it down, I suppose. And the point has already been made that it depends on where it is targeted and how it is spent. I think, as I alluded to earlier on, the cost of a university education, I think, is becoming prohibitively expensive, not just from the university viewpoint, but from the student's viewpoint. And that, I think, has a profound effect on recruitment at the end of that supply chain. So people come out of universities, hopefully with a degree, of course, but also with substantial student debt. That's got to have an effect, a negative one, on future generations of students wanting to take up a university education and what the prospects are for employment to pay off that debt later in life. That, I think, is a serious issue. Don't have simple answers to a complicated problem. But yes, as you alluded to in your question, funding, I think, is part of the solution.
I think it's just a signalling motivator as well to that point.
Speak into the microphone, please. Sorry.
Yep.
So you can hear.
So of course it's a signalling sort of it. Of course that's important as a motivator for any sort of aspirational young person who, of course, has skills and has options. It's going to become a factor that people decide about. So the more that we can have access to, and this isn't relevant for ARM, but the more that we have access to, those funding opportunities for those young people who are then thinking about what options are ahead of them and where. To your point that you were saying, Matt, about sort of if you had the option of £35,000 in the UK or £200,000, however much, multitude of that in Silicon Valley, then I understand why people might make the decision they made to move, and so I think that's really important to understand.
Yeah, and I'm noticing that we've got 30 minutes left, and I will actually try to get very simple answers to very difficult questions in that half an hour. So we're going to enter the policy space now. I think would be really interesting to hear, because we've got the previous government actually did create a framework for science, innovation and technology, bit of an industrial strategy. What do you want to see the government doing, sort of real concrete proposals for how we can scale up the contribution of physics-based businesses to UK prosperity, which is, after all, the point of this panel, and knowing of the multiplier effect. There's there is a really impressive multiplier effect when it comes to physics-based businesses. So there's a report from the IOP called Physics and the Economy, estimated in 2021 that a £8.8 billion increase in physics-based R&D would generate 34 billion in sort of increase in GDP. So what if Sir Keir or Rachel Reeves was going to come and say, give me one idea to promote growth in physics-based businesses, where would you go? So I've really sprung it on them there. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sorry, I appreciate this is, well, you've got to differentiate them according to what is the right sort of, so this, the solution and what would best help ARM to deliver growth is access to talent and improving the quality of our international agreements in trade on IP and services, like fundamentally, and prioritizing India and South Korea. Like those are the kinds of things that really matter. But that's completely different for another organization, which is, at a very different, so saying like physics businesses is a helpful term because of course we all have shared objectives about like we want to advocate for science, technology and physics within kind of for young people and help to show that it is for everyone. It's not something that is just for people who've made it into universities to do that. And the was it 17% statistic is awful. I think these are but there is a sense of saying we have a shared objective to promote it, but also the fundamental policy objective is completely dependent on what that might be for that company.
But but I suppose that's the thing, is talent. So do you just want to see more places at universities for physics graduates, engineering, that kind of thing? Lower fees, more bursaries, more scholarships? How do you solve that talent sort of blocked pipeline?
So I think there is a macro challenge, again, this is relevant for ARM, which is about kind of how can we help young people to identify. And the longitudinal education outcome study does help to do that, because now students can look at what is the fundamental fiscal output from this qualification. So if I study X at Y university, when I'm 30, what is the expected payment I'm likely to get for that? Which is helping to get people to identify what degrees offer some value. And it will help, hopefully, to show the importance of physics in that sense. Now, I think that what we're seeing now is that graduates are looking further down the supply chain and looking at the sort of the AI, the very exciting areas, and actually not overlooking some of the things like computer engineering and architecture, which is something that I think we are trying to promote more.
Okay.
Yep.
So Joe, what would be one concrete policy that would work for you in your area that could help this process along?
I mean, fundamentally, I would like to see action to release more private investment so that it can flow through venture capital firms into startup companies. We're leaving a lot of innovation, a lot of potential impact on the table by not developing all of these technologies that we could do. And in terms of specific ways that could be done, I mean, I'd like to flag actually, so we're convened today by the Institute of Physics. The Institute of Physics has been running a venture capital impact project looking specifically at the barriers and perceived barriers to getting investment into physics-powered businesses. They've identified 5 key barriers to releasing that investment, and they estimate that work on these 5 areas could lead to up to 4.7 billion of new investment into the sector. So I'd like to sort of flag that. It's going to be published later in the year.
Excellent. Okay. Robert?
I think my response is slightly different in that in taking a technology to market with a view to its commercial exploitation and addressing then the issue of that return on investment, technologies are very rarely commercially successful in splendid isolation of their links to other technologies. In other words, when you go through the supply chain and look at technologies coming out of academia into SMEs that specialize perhaps at the component level, and then from their SME customers up what you might call the food chain, from components into what we call sub-assemblies, and from sub-assemblies into integrated systems. Many large companies sell what you'd refer to as an integrated system. It's a more complex packaging of a number of technologies, and their development have to be supported in cohesion, not individually, not separately. So in other words, what I'm trying to say here is the industrial strategies that we've had in the past and which are currently being revamped, I think, have to acknowledge the manufacturing ability of individual companies and individual technologies that are required to underpin how several technologies, many technologies, come to market. A simple example of that is your mobile phone. Inside that mobile phone are a number of technologies which originate from different organizations that you as the customer don't care and have no reason to care. But the people that manufacture those mobile phones do. And it's their issue that understand how to manage and encourage the supply chain for a variety of technologies that end up in what you, as the consumer, see as perhaps as a single product.
So we're talking about supply chain management.
Absolutely.
Really. Matt, so what concrete policy would you like to see that could drive innovation, this kind of innovation that could kind of unlock prosperity?
I mean, it's a big question for a short answer, isn't it?
Yeah, but you're going to give us a great short answer, I know it.
I think, as I've sort of alluded to, that there are some things that we do well, and I think continuing to do that, things like the UK Quantum Programme, the investment in research councils. I think, just going back to the points I made earlier about education, physics is an amazing subject. In fact, it's more than a subject. It underpins the world that we live in. We all walk around with mobile phones. Everything has got physics somewhere. And we've already heard amazing statistics, 10% of GDP or whatever it was. And yet I read a headline in a newspaper, I can't remember which one, that said GCSE physics is dull as dishwater. And I haven't taken GCSE physics in a long time, but when I did it, it was pretty dull. And it's like, how do we turn something that's so exciting into something that's really not? And I think if there was one change that would underpin everything, it's to explain to young people who are bright, who are talented, who want to do something in the world, that physics is something that they can do and will make a difference.
Absolutely, and as I say, I lapsed physicist, and I left my research because I thought that would be the best thing for science, basically, if I left it. But I actually feel like I've spent the rest of my career as a journalist kind of evangelising about the joy and obviously the value of science. So on that note, I would like to open up the floor to questions. What I'm going to do is, do we have microphones? Excellent, thank you. Can I ask you if you would feel comfortable just say who you are, where you're from, and as a courtesy to other questioners and to the panel, please keep it brief and on topic. Thank you. So where should we go? We'll go, there's a hand up at the back. Actually, yes. Got a real imbalance here, is all the hands are up that side. No, we've got one here, so at the back, and then the lady in the red jacket, and then the lady at the front here, and then the chap in the front. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, I'm Toby. I'm a member from Oxford East, and I am also a lapsed physicist. Fairly recently lapsed, and I used to work in public sector green energy research, and it was wonderful, and there is a lot of joy in that. And I worked in nuclear fusion research, and that is something that's having an awful lot of private sector interest at the moment.
And so I'm going to be rude and ask what your question is.
My question is, there were people in my public sector, publicly funded workplace, trying to solve problems that I know have been solved in laboratories in private sector companies, but are locked behind IP. And science, until private sector involvement happened, was sort of an unbroken chain of citations all the way back to like Aristotle. And now, due to sort of IP and competition, etc., there is these walls being built up. How do we square that, and how do we get past that to enable better development and innovation?
Do you mean so how to stop people reinventing the wheel? So how to unlock IP, sort of to stop innovations being locked behind IP?
So there are companies
that patents.
The best magnets in nuclear fusion are made by Tokamak Energy. They have excellent magnets. The public sector can't use them because Tokamak Energy are using them. So we're designing magnets, but we're hoping to be as good as that, or I'm not anymore. But they were designing that kind of magnet, and it's like that problem's been solved, but we can't use that solution.
Can't you license it?
I don't work there.
Oh right, okay. So how do we? Really, what we're talking about is better collaboration between public research, public sector and private sector research.
I don't know whether I really recognise that that total gap between them. I mean, Tokamak, actually the company that you're talking about, they are, licensing and working with a lot of other companies, and and hopefully I'm not quite sure what the latest is on the STEP program for fusion energy, but certainly really hope that the new administration sort of pushes forward with that as they were going to really fund an incredible amount of public-private collaboration.
Okay, all right, let's move to the lady in the red jacket. Thank you. And I won't ask everyone on the panel to answer, just if you feel you are best placed, please just indicate.
Hi, I'm Hilary Levers. I'm CEO at Engineering UK. I really welcome the focus on the skills needed for R&D, and we're just looking at the new government and wondering whether they have understood the dependence of their missions on actually having the skills and talent underpinning it.
Right.
So my question is, what would give you the confidence that actually the skills and talent is going to flow? What could you hear in 2 hours' time that would make you go, oh, it's going to happen?
Great question. Okay. Actually, you know what? Maybe more if you want to come in here. What's the golden phrase you have to hear fall from the lips of our dear leader? Go on, Matt.
Well, obviously I work in a university, and this is going to sound very self-serving, but I think we know that universities are struggling. Everybody's seen the headlines, propped up by international students, and I think it would be good to have some sort of reform in that area. I don't have the answers, but I think I would like to hear that the new government has something in mind, whatever that, even if it's just recognising the problem and that something needs to be done. As I say, I wish I had a great answer, but I don't.
No, that's a good answer. I mean, universities are the engine house of innovation. So, would anyone else like to come in here who hasn't?
I think, well, it's again, it's more of a narrative point, but I think it's something that gives more of attention to saying, actually, what is it that beneath the surface that actually does drive innovation, and what is it? It's not just the things, which is not just the end products and the AI, machine learning, all these different things, but it's there's so much within that we are prepared to dig deeper. I feel like that's something which is something which can politically get overlooked sometimes. And I think because, of course, there's a natural propensity to focus on the areas that have the greatest household resonance. And so the more that we can start to look into, and like saying, I'm digging deeper, we're prepared to do that, I feel like that's a helpful narrative in that point. That's helpful.
So actually what you mean is, do you mean you want the government to be championing the cause of science and innovation?
Yeah, but also the various things that are underneath it. That's not just the as you say, to the point that someone mentioned that the phone in everyone's hand, but actually the IP and the architecture and the chips within the phone is something which people is there, but it's where the UK has huge strength. But is something which I think we could do more to champion.
Right. Okay. Excellent. A message from who else would like a message? What kind of message would you want?
Well,
Robert?
okay, it's not an easy concept, I suppose, to put in a few words, but as I said earlier, there's a distinction in my mind to be made between an industry strategy and a strategy for manufacturing. It's understanding the complication in taking emerging technology to the marketplace. And I think there are pockets of, or gaps rather, in a UK supply chain that enables the country to exploit commercially emerging technology from academia. Now, there are several examples I could quote, but I'm slightly reluctant because I'm still doing my background research on this. But it is something that I've taken up with elements in DSIT and hope to continue to do so, to elaborate further. So an example, as a case in point, is some of you might be aware of the quantum technology strategy, and within that there are 5 missions that are now declared as things to aim for. And I've contributed, along with many other people in other companies rather, as to what those missions should entail. So to clarify what I mean, Mission 1 was to the effect of building a powerful quantum computer. Such a statement inspires the public imagination. It's clear to articulate, but it doesn't actually help manufacturing industry understand how to manufacture a quantum computer why they would want to do that in the case of simply building one quantum computer. Perhaps the issue is on the journey to building a high-power computer, such as a quantum computer, it's the other industries that would benefit from the components and the other technologies that are developed in addressing that one cause.
It's a bit like the Apollo program, isn't it? Sort of driving the technologies of the
I might have
future.
drawn reference to the Apollo program when I wrote
I'm going to go. I know that there was a lady here that had a question, and then there was a gentleman here. Please keep them brief because I think we've got some other questions coming up too. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm Lydia Hyde. I'm a member of the Professional Standards Committee on the IOP.
Professional
Standards Committee for the IOP. I'm a physicist and engineer as well. So my question is, I have worked in R&D in physics in the private and the public sector all my life. And what we've noticed is that a lot of the students that are coming up, they've got the core physics that they've learned at 100, 200 years old. What's fundamentally missing from our education system is like R&D skills, how you go out and invent, how you go out and solve problems that haven't got a solution yet. How do we re-inject that innovation skill set back into our education system?
I think I'll tell you what. Why don't we take? Do you want to? Who wants to? Two people to take this question. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
And then maybe Matt.
Yeah, I think it starts at a really young age. I mean, there's been a sort of reduction in emphasis on the importance of teaching art and design and technology. And you're right. Sort of all through my undergrad, nobody taught me anything about actually doing physics. It was only when I became a research student and then as a postdoc that I'm sort of drawing back on those skills that I happened to learn at school that many don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry.
No, I'm happy to take. I used to be a teacher long time ago, and so
Yes.
I think another question that we have here is like thinking about the applications. And I think something that I used to do a lot of work in cybersecurity policy, and there was this. If I was to go back and say, the concept of penetration testing is incredibly attractive to a 14-year-old. It's like, you can hear something, please break it, and we will reward you for breaking it, and then you can find vulnerabilities, and it's great. And I feel as though there's the question about how can curriculum manifest the applications of science and technology and physics. Those are questions which I think is incredibly powerful, and it does come back to curriculum design. And I think that we have had Nick Gibbs been skills minister for 14, 15 years, or whatever it was, and I think he had a particular view of education. And I feel like there is an opportunity now to kind of reinvent that.
Excellent. We have our guest minister, not minister, but our science political person. So welcome, Chion Mora. Thank you very much for popping in. As you know, this panel is all about how to supercharge physics R&D to unlock prosperity, and that is, the growth is the new mantra of your government. So can you tell us how you envisage government going about that? What are going to be the foci for you, for the government in terms of what we need to do? Because obviously there is work to do.
Yes, well, thanks very much, and I'm sorry that I'm just popping out. We were discussing critical national resilience infrastructure next door, but I really wanted the Institute of Physics has been for me a real leader in driving skills and investment in skills. And speaking of before I came into Parliament, I worked as an electrical engineer for 20 years, and the foundation of physics, if you like, and the study of physics for the technologies, whether it be optical fibers, everything, much of the technology basis. The innovation basis for much of this world is really important, and so to see those skills being taken up, particularly by girls and those from underrepresented communities, is really important. So that's a huge question, though. How are we going to use physics to drive growth?
Can I focus it? Can I focus it because one of the overarching themes that came out on the panel was skills and talent. Mm-hmm. And it seems to go right back to GCSEs, to getting people in to do physics and engineering degrees and so on. How is the government going to tackle the talent and skills shortage?
Well, I think that's part. So the key message, and you'll hear this obviously much better from Keir in his speech than from me. But the key message of this government is is growth and achieving growth across all the country. And as a Northeast MP, I know that our regions have not contributed what they could to our economic prosperity, and the lack of economic prosperity and the regional inequalities is a real driver of so many issues, from health inequalities to a sense of being left behind, etc. So we really need to drive our regional skills base. And one of the things that we need, so much I could talk about, but one of the things that we need to do is to change the culture that says that something like physics is, I would say that for my constituents, science is something that happens somewhere in a lab over there, and it's not part of their life or their culture. It doesn't feel part of their life or the culture of their community. And even worse, technology may be considered something that's oppressive and exploitative, rather than something that they can benefit from and have fantastic jobs and a career in. So what we've set out as a government is we're going to set up, or has it been set up already? Skills England, to bring together employers, educators, trade unions, etc., so that access in the longer term, access to skills, the right skills, are something they can have at every time in life. We're going to redevelop, if you like, the apprenticeship levy to make it more of a basis for acquiring the skills that you need through lifelong learning. But I also think we're going to by moving government to digital first, so digitalizing a lot of public services and showing that as a government we are embracing technology. I think we need to reset the conversation so that my constituents see technology and innovation as something that that it's exciting and that they can be part of. And that means also delivering for in schools, such as the school I went to, a comprehensive school in Newcastle, which then did further maths and physics, which is what I did, now doesn't do further maths anymore. So delivering for schools in terms of recruiting more STEM-based educators as well. And so I just find there's also the relationship between universities, spin-outs and access to capital, so that the fantastic research that happens in our universities is a platform for growth across the country.
Can I just ask you, as you're here, about the exascale, the cancellation of the exascale thing in Edinburgh, because obviously that sort of computing is a critical strategy in scaling up compute. So how do we square that with a pro-science agenda?
It wasn't a cancellation.
It's not going ahead.
It was, and I think Peter Kyle speaks very eloquently on this, and it's similar to what was found in what Rachel Reeves found. That the money for that was not. There was not a line of money. There was not a line in any budget anywhere for that. It was announced without any funding. And when Peter Kyle got into the department, and what expenditure, the budget, we have, we recognise, the Labour government recognises the critical importance in sticking to funding commitments and having funding commitments. That was an announcement that had no funding. So it's not, as I understand it, it could not have gone ahead without finding a funding stream from somewhere, and we couldn't find a funding stream for it in this year because there's already a £22 billion black hole elsewhere. But that doesn't mean to say, that's not to say quite the same as saying it's been cancelled.
So you have expressed before the idea of a 10-year funding sort of schemes and longer term funding.
We've committed to 10-year funding schemes for certain. We haven't yet, I think, named what those institutions would be. But for example, one of the examples we gave was UKRI. So longer term funding, so that that security is there, and that so we can take long term decisions, and also critically have longer term partnerships between research and the public sector and the private sector. And with that, I am going to have to go.
Thank you very much, Chi. Thank you. I'm really sorry that we haven't because of the slight interruption, I don't think we're going to get time to go back to our questioners, but I am going to just ask very quickly. I want to go back to the panel and ask very quickly for each of them just to sum up kind of what they're going to take away from this panel. Or a tech to watch. That would actually be quite interesting. Can you tip a tech to watch? Or what's one thing that maybe you've heard on this panel that's changed your mind about something and you're going to go away thinking about something new? Let's start with you, Peter.
So, in terms of something I'm going to take back from here is I think there are probably is how can we be I guess the dual role of making sure that we have collectively can support one another to promote and advocate for physics, for science within schools earlier on. How can we think about the applications of physics more broadly, sort of earlier on, make it more accessible for more people, and how can we also promote the kinds of decision making processes that can help promote science more. That's a really important thing for me. And I'll leave it there because we've got time.
Yeah, thank you. Jo?
Thank you. I think, in terms of tech to watch, rather than a specific technology, I would say I'm really excited in work that is looking in a different way. So rather than linear thinking about technology and siloed thinking about specifically different sectors, actually interdisciplinary technologies and technologies which take account of the really interconnected systems that we work. So as an example, a recent Nature paper out of the University of Cambridge was taking concrete cement powder recycling, actually linking that with the steel recycling supply chain using some very complex physics and chemistry, interlinking those systems to decarbonise both at the same time.
Excellent. Robert?
Yeah, I'll nominate photonics and specifically photon integrated circuits. And the reason for that is the growing need to find a means by which increasing volumes of data can be processed quickly and cheaply. So it's gradually moving away from the use of electrons to photons. And I think that is a future for investment for low cost but high power data processing.
Okay. Matt?
So a tech to watch, my field is obviously healthcare. And I think there's lots of exciting things coming down the pike in terms of what we can measure and understand in the brain. So we know that things like mental health, neurological, psychiatric conditions are a massive, massive problem in an ageing society. But to counter that, I think there's an awful lot of exciting neurotechnology, so that's going to be my tech to watch.
Brilliant. And before we wrap up, can the IOP people in the room just raise their hands? These are the people to talk to if you want to pursue some of this more. In the meantime, I just want to say that really the message from this panel has been that we need more money, better manufacturing, more talent, more skills. We need to radically overhaul the GCSE system and the degree system and universities. We need more investment in R&D, and we need to just basically keep hammering away and making things better in those very simple areas. So with that, I want to thank our panellists, Matt, Robert, Jo and Peter. Please give them a round of applause and thank you. And thank you to the audience as well. And I did mischaracterise the IOP. It's the Learning Society for the UK and Ireland, not England and Ireland. Thank you.